welcome to another edition of Bringing the Closers podcast. Ryan Ray alongside the one, the only Ben Samuels. Ben, I'm actually on bringingtheclosers.com, and I haven't looked at this since it went live. It went dead. We revived it, got the paddles out, clear. She's back. But I'm noticing on here, there are three pictures. There's me with my lovely wife. There's you, and then there's Nate. If you look at these pictures, it appears to me that my picture is the largest, yours is slightly smaller, and then Nate's is almost an oval. Is there any strategy we're deploying there? Is it strategic? Is it just we're not competent enough to actually put together a proper website?
Or is it just like everything else, the truth lies somewhere in the middle of all of that? Somewhere, I'm not sure. We might need to talk to the producer about this one.
I think we should. It's his fault. So he produces this content.
Or maybe he's got this OCD thing where he can't see himself in a square. It's got to be a circle. Okay. I don't.
Which reminds me, we do have a number, the bat line, 682-422-4105. That's 682-422-4105. You can hit us up with text or voicemail there. Bringingtheclosers@gmail.com for emails, questions, commentary, things along those lines. Ben, last week was a holiday. I was in Denver, and it was Yom Kippur. And so my question is should I expect better treatment? I don't know why I'm asking this. You already trashed me on LinkedIn yesterday. Never mind. Let's get on with the show. We are doing an episode like 15, 16, so never mind. I should expect better treatment. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, no, that was a fantastic intro. I don't know why you're letting me hit the floor. I had, you're right. I did celebrate.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just observed Yom Kippur this past week. I'm not clear what you're talking about on LinkedIn yesterday. That's what my facial expression was. I don't remember what the comment was. But
I called you the undisputed LinkedIn champ, and you still had to come in there and you still had to come in there and give it to me a little bit more. I called you the undisputed champ.
I mean, yeah, but if you're going to try to take the throne, you're going to have to deal with some of that process. It is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, Ryan. I apologize. Actually, that's
you don't apologize.
No,
don't lie. Yom Kippur is last week. Okay, don't start.
A little peek behind the curtain. I won't go off too much of a tangent, but keep in mind, for those of you that are Jewish listening to the show, you'll know this, but between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is where you're written. Jews believe that you're either written into the book of life or the book of death. And so by Yom Kippur, it's already been decided. So now I can do whatever I want. I mean, I got free reign now.
Free reign. You did. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's your.
I hope my mom doesn't listen to this one.
Your mom loves me. She's one of my favorite people in the world. So, Mom, love you.
Somehow, no, seriously. Somehow you made a good impression. Unclear how. I haven't been able to ask because I don't really know if I want the answer. But no, you did well. Actually, both my parents. Somehow.
I have that effect on people. Not on you, obviously, but people.
Well,
smart people, high intellect, high character, high quality people.
You've now met my dad. You quasi sort of talked to my mom through me. I haven't even met the wife yet. It is what it is. I see how it is. It's okay.
You met my kids, 2 of them. You met 50% of my kids.
I've met 60% of the clan now.
Now we're now see higher math is tough. I could do 4 divided by 2. Now we're getting into you've met 60% of the clan. I guess 50%. Me, 2 kids. I've got 3 kids, 2 kids and a wife. So you met 50% of the Ray clan. You have met.
Okay, all right. Making progress. Just like your LinkedIn views for the week. Making progress.
Wow. There it is, folks. This is the great insight you come to this podcast for. Ben, undisputed LinkedIn champion. What are we talking about today?
So I was reading an article recently in, I think it was the Houston Business Journal, that was talking about, it's not a new topic, but it's something that I've always thought a lot about. And I think that you and I are going to have some insights on this. It was an article just talking about the I guess the utilization of college and the the really need for the masses to be going to four-year universities, taking on what usually is pretty sizable debt to be able to do that, and really in this economy, in this world, and going into the future, into the into more artificial intelligence and technology and all these things, is the paradigm of universities really should that be prescribed to for the masses? So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about that, because I think there's so much value in so many people, so much of the communities, across the country, across the world, getting into trade schools and really learning a skill, learning a trade, and then through that, if you get out there and you can work for somebody and kind of learn the ropes, you can also find so many success stories of people that are able to parlay that into their own business, and then you're able to realize the American dream maybe in a different style. But I think I don't know if you know the numbers off the top of your head, but I mean the average tuition in this country is $40,000 plus per year. That's not even really including room and board and other expenses, etc. And that really just prices out a majority of the country in general. But then also the people that can quote unquote afford it, they're in massive amounts of debt for a long time. So I thought it would be interesting. I know that was kind of long-winded, but I thought it might be interesting to kind of have a conversation, within this podcast about about the trade schools and kind of what that allow those skills and that really allows you to realize. Because I mean like yourself, you didn't go to a four-year university, you didn't go to college, and so and look at where you are today. And so I thought it would be kind of an interesting conversation.
Maybe I would have you beat LinkedIn if I did go to college. That's kind of my first takeaway. That might have helped.
Since you brought it up again, I will say I thought it was interesting. So the man has a top 20 all-time.
Oh, good Lord, here we go. Let's get back to college. Let's get back to college.
No, see, you open the door, and I'm gonna have to close it for you. And so I understand that he posts very little compared to how much I post. I think I probably put out about 75 or 80 posts on LinkedIn per week. Ryan puts somewhere between maybe 6 and a dozen. And every time we talk about the views, he always says, if I posted more, it'd be up there. But I mean, you probably get 100,000 plus views per day on the other podcast. And so I mean,
at least, yeah, that's a low
right?
day. That's a low day.
All right, circling back now that I've closed the door, we can come back to
you gave me the Stone Cold Stunner. I laid there flat. You did the Hulk Hogan run off the ropes, and then you leg dropped me. I'm over the count 1, 2, 3. Ben is the champ. So this is a subject that is kind of near to my heart on a lot of levels because I didn't go to college. I mean, I did go. I didn't finish. I'm a dropout officially.
How long did you go?
So the first time I went, it wasn't even a year, and I was going for a specific reason. I was going to be a football coach, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. And so I had no reason to go because I didn't like school generally. I was just going for that, and I had to have a degree for that. I've gone back a few other times to get the degree because I feel it always creates some kind of inadequacy in me, like, oh. And there are certain things I openly admit I do have deficits in because I don't have not a college degree, but certain college classes that I would have gotten if I would have gotten a business degree. There's certain things I just fundamentally, I can go pick up a book and read them, but now it's like, okay, is it worth my time to read it or pay someone to do it? So there are certain deficits I do have. My general rule of thumb is if you're going to be a lawyer, now there's some exceptions to all these rules, but let's just say general rule, a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, something like that, then I do believe you should go to college. I do think that if you have the skill and intellect that going to, and I'm not picking on one university here, but let's just say Texas, which is a reputable university, but it's not Harvard or MIT. So I don't think that is as important as it used to be. But there probably are some rare exceptions where maybe getting an MIT is important over Texas. And I think you could go a college close to me like Tarleton State. You could probably pick up the Tarleton State degree, which is a lot cheaper than Texas, and probably get the same things done with your life. Because once you get into the workforce, people begin to start looking at you, where you are, who you know, and what you've done. It seems that initial threshold, the degree and where you went, is a lot more important. I don't ask any of my doctors, Ben, where they went to med school. Not a single one. Now, I might ask them if they have on like a sports shirt. Like, oh, did you go here? Because I'm curious about, but I don't, if I had a doctor who said I went to whatever LSU med school or Texas med school, I don't even know who's got med schools. I wouldn't be like, hold on, let me, what year did you graduate? Okay, so y'all ranked 32nd that year in medical degrees or whatever. I wouldn't do that. the doctor's been around, he's been in practice, and so at some point the degree almost becomes irrelevant because your work speaks for itself. So I think that's kind of how I view things. So again, to kind of recap, if you're going to work for a very let's just throw out, I don't know, ExxonMobil. And ExxonMobil has a certain division, and they really only hire the top candidates. And historically, they've only hired MIT, Brown, and Harvard grads. Okay, yeah, in that case, you should really go after that degree. If you're going to be a lawyer and you're going to be just suing people or litigating, I would say save the money and probably go for a smaller, cheaper law degree wherever you can find that at. As far as trade schools are severely undervalued. And I think that is something that most degrees, 4 years, should be trade degrees because you could get stuff. And what I use for this example is.
So actually, before you get into the trade schools, you said a couple of things that I wanted to circle back on that I thought were really interesting. So number one, you talked about and you only said it in passing, but you talked about, if I'm trying to learn something or if I'm trying to do something at this point in your career, do I want to learn that skill or do I want to pay someone to do it? Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about because, in your day-to-day, there's very few things that it probably makes sense for you to pull out the stops and go learn something brand new rather than, okay, can I find someone to delegate that to? Mm-hmm. But, as a teenager or as a young 20s, one of the things that you do want to do is latch onto something and immerse yourself in it because then you have that knowledge and then you can kind of grow from there. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic in terms of just kind of where you are in the process, whether it makes sense to learn something and get your hands dirty and really get into the nitty gritty versus do I just want to pay someone to do this because it's not worth my time.
Right. So let me give you an example what I'm talking about. So because I own a business, we have a lot of employees. I say a lot of employees. For a small business, we have a lot of employees. You could say there are certain accounting things that I just fundamentally don't really have a good grasp on. Now, with that being said, I can look at a P&L and I can figure out if we're making money. I can figure out a multiplier on our hourly wages. So at that level, I can figure out what I need to do to be profitable. But there probably are more advanced metrics I could deploy that would really help me hone in. Now, I don't know if that's one accounting classes, two accounting classes, so the things I'm talking about are stuff like that. Now my grammar is very poor. And that's more of a function of not paying attention in elementary school and high school. So those are things that I could have, I would say, okay, if I wanted to focus, there's a handful of things that's not a 4-year degree. That's not even 1 year. That's like, we'll say 6 classes I probably could take. And I've got some books over here on some of that stuff and I'll get through them and I'll read them and do that. So I think most people are probably closer if you're in what we're doing, Ben, and this is kind of where you're at. This is what you need, those 6 things to be rounded off. Whereas if you're going to be an engineer, I have no hope of being an engineer. There's so much math and, all these classes that I don't even, that's a 4-year probably. It could probably shorten from 4 years, but the way that the traditional system set up, it would take 4 years to even do that. And I wouldn't even be ready to engage in that process today because I'm so far behind that curve.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. I think the other thing I wanted to touch on that was really interesting, and I think you and I may see it a little bit differently. You mentioned for a second about the the utility of the prestige of the certain university that you're going to, and I think there's a lot to be said for. I think that if you go to, I think it works both sides. If you go to like a Harvard or MIT or a USC or even a University of Texas or those kind of schools, they have massive alumni associations, and they have there are times where you can call, hey, you're calling a law firm and just like getting an interview because you went to the school of the alma mater sort of thing. And so I think to a degree that the school that you choose does have a lot of weight. That's not necessarily to say that someone should gear themselves or hone in on the more expensive schools or the more prestigious, but it is something to certainly think about. And then on the flip side, I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that kind of once you get into the workforce, you're at that point you're really going on your track record, right? You've moved off of what your degree was, what your GPA mm-hmm. was. Mm-hmm. But that being said, one of the things that I wanted to kind of hear what you had to say about it, and I'm curious, how R Squared Globals takes care of this or sees this issue, I guess. When I was trying to get in to my very first job, well, actually, I guess it was more in internships. I was interviewing for internships right after I had graduated from my post BA program at Western State, and it was the conversation of okay, the employer is saying there's an entry level position, but in order to qualify for this, you need 2 years of experience. And I would say, well, I have school experience. I got this degree, but I don't have any field experience. But I need an entry level position. And so there was this disconnect of like, okay, so how am I supposed to get an entry level position with no experience if the prereq for the entry level position is experience? And so I'm curious, how you see that, because even more so, I might imagine if you didn't go to university and maybe you don't even have a trade school certification or something like that, those might be even like two quote unquote like strikes against you, in addition to the fact that you don't have the experience. And so how might somebody, in your opinion, or talk about it for a second, I'm curious, how might somebody kind of break into the industry if they're trying to go in-house, because that's a qualifier, right? I mean, if they're independent, it doesn't matter. But if they're trying to get in-house, what are some ways that they can kind of close that gap, or what do you thought?
So that's a great question, first off. So entry-level positions at my company need to be qualified. I have a couple that I categorize. One, I have a standing offer that if you're desperate and need a job, not if you're employed, if you're desperate and you need a job, because if you're employed, I don't want to hire you unless I know I can keep you employed. So that's why I make that qualification. So if you need a job, I will give you a job today. Sales, 100% commission. I will tell you where to call. I'll give you kind of some scripts. I'll let you call and I'll pay you commission right now. Now, eventually I might get to a point where no one's ever taken me up on that offer, but I will offer that to anyone that says, man, I need a job. And you can work 20 hours a week for me doing that and go still hunt for jobs. We'll work with you. So that's the first thing I would say. We'll give you a phone. We'll tell you where to call. Give you a little script, smile and dial, get it done. We'll pay you commission 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, much as you want to work. And then we'll actually, if you do a good job for us and you go interview for Ben, we'll write you a reference and we'll say, hey, Ben, Tom's been in here. He's been working 20 hours a week. He's pounding the phone. He hadn't had success yet, but literally came in, said, I'll do anything you want today. That's if you have no experience, like you have nothing that we can take you with. We offer that because, listen, I've always said that if tomorrow, if Arsenal Global closed down, I have a handful of people I'm going to call that I think, okay, these people can get me a job, If that doesn't call, I've got a family of 4 kids and a wife. I'm going to go get 2 or 3 jobs just to make sure revenue's coming in and things are going on. So I'll be working 60 hours a week within 7 to 10 days. Just if that's McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and Burger King, I don't care. I'll be working just to make sure there's revenue coming in. On top of that, I will then call back those 10 people there in my kind of close circle, say, hey, listen, you give me 100% commission, I'll come on today. Just tell me who to call, I'll come on today. Because I'm confident that I will be able to do that if I'm desperate enough. If you hear those things about you don't make a sale because you're not wanting to breathe, like you need water or whatever. Yeah, I would be wanting to breathe. So I always offer that to people, and no one ever takes it up. That's fine. I'm not mad. I'm just saying that's the first entry level position. Now on the field side, we have entry level positions, and really you don't have to know a lot. It's if you're willing to work in the outside and travel, then there you go. We'll put you to work if we have a spot for you. On the office side, this is something interesting here. So we have, CAD drafters and GIS technicians. And those are should be trade school type jobs. And what our experience has been, GIS is usually 4-year degree people. CAD has been usually trade school. Regardless of where they come out at, we still have to train them on the job because they can just really run the software at a very high level. So our offer is that if you come in with I'm looking on Esri.com right now, I think they have like a 30-day or 60-day course, whatever. If you come in and you bring that certificate that says, hey, I've got a 60-day Esri course, or you buy an AutoCAD online course for a couple $100 and you complete that, you've done what you would have done at the trade school. So if Ben, you came to me and said, hey, I want a job as a drafter. I'm like, well, can you draft? No. We would say, okay, well, if you go take this, if we have a position open, we'd say, if you go take this course, come back and show us you completed it, we'll hire you because you've learned how to run the software, the basics, and then we'll have to teach you how we do our stuff anyways. So that's a very easy entry point to get in with a company like ours. And a lot of people, again, they don't take that, which is really interesting. And it's like, because once you get in with us, now maybe some companies won't hire you because you don't have a 4-year degree or whatever. But odds are you can probably keep working for the rest of your life in these disciplines. And the cost to do it with Esri or whatever the online CAD classes I'm trying to see right now is really cheap. I'm looking here on Esri.com right now, and I can't see a price. So we'll keep on going. But so those are 3 ways to get in with my company if we're hiring. And if we're in a spot where we can bring on someone that we got to train, is 100% sales commission. We'll put you on that. In the field, We'll put you out there. You don't have to know anything, and you'll learn. And that's actually a good job you can have, feed your family with. AutoCAD or drafting. You can take a 30-day course, and literally a 30-day course usually is at your own pace. You could probably pound that thing out in 2 or 3 days. These are pretty basic commands inside these functions in these programs you could actually learn. So that's how we try to incentivize that.
What's the phone number that I'm calling for the sales job after we get off recording?
911. Tell them you're looking for Ryan, and give them your address. Say Ryan's missing. I'm looking for him, and give them your address. I think something bad's happened. That's what you should say. Just give them your address.
Does it matter who picks up?
No. It doesn't matter.
I'm not asking for like a specific person. It's just whoever.
No. Just call frantic. If you're frantic, you get a better response. Yeah. Ryan's missing. I think I did something to hurt him. He might not be responsive. Please come. Give him your address. My name is Ben Samuels. That's what I would do. That's the best way to do that.
And that was 9 and then 11.
Yeah, 9 and then 2 ones. Exactly.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks.
For anyone who's actually looking for a job, you could send us one at info@gor2.com. That's info@gor2.com. That would be the best way to get in. And so you heard of the podcast, and we'll try to take care of you if we can. Does that help? Does that answer your question, though, Ben?
Absolutely. And then I want to circle back to one part of the question, the second part, because I want to push back on you for a second, or just kind of volley it back. So what advice would you give to someone that's trying to break into the industry, into a major that does have that qualification of, hey, we need you to have 3 years of experience. Hey, I don't have the experience. What are some ways, or is that not the answer? Is the answer go get another job to get the experience and try to bolster your resume so that you can then circle back?
Yeah, the majors are different because they do have, a lot tighter requirement. The question that we've had this on the Textile Guys podcast a lot, and the question that we always say is, so if you wanted to go to Exxon and they have a requirement, the question that they have to answer is that requirement, it's this degree plus experience, or is it this degree and or this experience? That's a little bit different there. So let's say that you have some kind of drilling job. Can you go to a small E&P, learn that trade, that skill at Ben Samuels E&P for 3, 5, 7 years, and then call them back up and say, hey, I want to come work for you guys now? That's a question that you have to take on a company by company basis, and then you have to also understand that no matter the answer here is that the degrees take 3 to 4 years, the experience takes 3 to 4 years, and 3 to 4 years, both of these things could change, right? So if you don't have it now, if the baseline is you had to have a degree and experience, and you're trying to find out do you get another degree or not, that's one thing. If you're coming out of high school and it's like a petroleum engineer degree, well, okay, then they're not gonna probably reduce that requirement. But if it's like, okay, I'm not really sure, they might let me in if I go back and get a master's. A master's is 2 years. But in these 2 years, I could actually go and do a lot of stuff. You got to remember, the super majors go buy small companies, and they're not putting degree requirements on these small companies. Like, hey, you guys got to have PhDs from Harvard. They're like, can you do this? And so the reason that Exxon bought XTO was they had an expertise in drilling. And so you can get that. And so you mentioned the networking thing. One of the things that I did when I was young, when I was 22, 23 in the industry, is I'd go out and I'd be on these projects, and I was running the day-to-day of the company, so it's pretty clear I was a young guy. And I would just sit around and be like, hey, Ben, Ben's, let's say 55, kind of giving me the stink eye because I'm some young punk out here. I'd say, hey, yeah, just like that. I'd say, hey, Ben, Brian Ray, we'd be talking. I'd say, well, where you been working at? And Ben would say, well, I worked here, here, and here. I'd say, okay, well, you worked in the Barnett, huh? Yeah. Well, who'd you work for? I worked for these guys. Okay. Well, if it was some company I never heard of, I'd say, well, we work for Chesapeake out there between this time period and this time period. You'd be surprised at how just throwing that kind of verbiage out gets you connected with someone, because that person goes, oh, well, I know someone over at Chesapeake. Did you know this guy? What department was he in? Now, I may not know a guy from Adam, but I can keep talking. What department was he in? Oh, no. He was over there. No, we were over here doing this. You might have remembered this happened. Oh, and the next thing you know, by the end of that 5-minute conversation, you feel like you're best friends, even though but a lot of times it'd be, oh, I was working for these guys, and then so-and-so, like, yeah, I know so-and-so. Well, now you're really synced in. So if you're not going college route on the network, I think the professional network is a good way to go too. It's just, you have to remember, where did you work? Who did you work for? Who do you know? Stuff like that.
Absolutely, and I certainly don't want to paint the picture that it was like an either or. I think,
no, you didn't.
It certainly worked in tandem, but actually, to your point, I guess when I said that, I was thinking about outside of energy. So take energy off the table for a second. If you're just talking about, a a new law grad or
Yeah.
a new doctor or pick an industry
Right.
that's not energy specific. I would imagine that having a degree from MIT or Penn State
Sure.
allows you, if the president of the company they're trying to get hired by went to that alma mater, I think that does give you, and let me know, obviously, unless the president had a bad experience, right? This is not a unilateral thing.
Yeah.
But I think there's certainly an element of the prestige of the university, and then also, like you said, the networking. But also, to your point, and this is not apropos to anything, and I probably shouldn't say it, but if I'm going to so let me back up. Over the last 10 years, I've had a number of pretty serious, injuries on one, for some reason or another, shoulder or whatever. If I was to go to a new shoulder surgeon, okay, and their degree was from, and I apologize to anyone that went there. This is the first one that came to my mind. This is not a dig on this school specifically, but if the degree is from Chico State University, I may have a different opinion of that degree and that knowledge base as opposed to a Johns Hopkins. And so
yeah, go ahead.
No, and it's not as though I would walk out of the office, but it would be a piece of the puzzle that that might register on some level. Now, that being said, the other thing I would say is if the guy, if the surgeon is in their 60s, it's no longer relevant, right?
Yeah, and so the example I use is if a new lawyer calls me up, wants a job, I say, where'd you graduate from? A lawyer who's been in the business 10 years, I say, how much can you get me? It's a different question. Yeah. Right, and that's what you're saying. Right. So someone new, because there is going to be that bias when they're new. It's like, well, I never even heard of this university. Was this online? What'd y'all do here? Is this correspondence? How did you become a doctor or a lawyer? That's one thing. But after 10 years, they have classes and references and things you can check on. Right. Then the work speaks for itself, and but it's a hard thing. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't go to college. I will tell you this. I think one of the things that I didn't graduate college, and one of the things that makes me probably a little quirky, a little weird, is I thrive on crushing college graduates. That's one of my motivating factors. Like being in a deal and I get the better end of the college graduate. It's now the college grads have got me plenty of times, so I can't say it's happened 100%. But it's we talked about this the other day. It's kind of like that Michael Jordan Hall of Fame speech where he goes and he kind of lists all the people who are against him. I kind of use that not graduating as college as kind of the motivation to inspire me. So it's not that I have anything against college graduates. I employ a lot of them. You're a good friend of mine. You're a college graduate. I don't have anything. But psychologically, I do try to use that to make sure that, it makes me more aware and sensitive of things I don't know because I don't have a college degree. So I'm kind of always out there kind of worried about this. But on the flip side, if there's a big opportunity, it does give me a little bit more satisfaction if the other guy has a college degree and I get the better of him because it's like, but and it's not personal. It's just kind of more of a mental thing for me.
No, I'll flip that into a positive for you, or into a more positive. I think that that's the chip on your shoulder, and then that's the source of your motivation to really crush it. And I think that's awesome. I think everybody needs that. Everybody finds that somewhere, right? And, so for you to have identified that is great. And also, I mean, to that end, I think you are you're kind of the poster child for a 4-year degree is not necessary to become successful and to do a lot of inspiring and really exciting things. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, I was gonna say is I think for me the caution is I always hate saying duplicate what I do because I know how I think and I don't know how you think. Does that make sense?
And I don't want to know how you think. That would be a scary process.
I'm trying to. Sorry, but I mean, me and you. So there's a lot of differences between me and you, Ben. But I think the if you just said, well, the college degree is kind of a big difference between us, but I think mentality, obviously how we try to close deals is a little bit different. We have different techniques that we use, but our mentality is the same. So you have a degree that probably helps you in some areas. I don't have a degree; it probably hurts me in some areas, may help me in others. But our mentality is that's more important to me than the degree. So when this discussion has come up, if you're trying to do stuff like me and Ben do, the mentality is far more important than the degree, unless you're going to go remove hearts for a living or something, or brain surgery.
So I'm glad you said that because that's actually what I wanted to talk about next. I think Actually, let me do it a different way. Ryan, on an average week, how many hours per week would you say that you are doing one of these three things? Listening to a podcast, listening to an audiobook, whether for pleasure or for business, or reading an article that's for business. How many hours a week do you think you spend doing those three things?
Well, you can quantify it like this. The easiest way to start with is how many hours do I play PlayStation? So my family goes to bed. This is dead serious. My family goes to bed. My wife and kids go to bed about 9, about 10:30. I usually wind it down. I play Xbox PlayStation for an hour and a half. 100% of that time is listening. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes I'll be watching a game. The same thing. I put in the headphones and I'm using that time because I can play Madden or watch a sports game and I don't have to be laser focused on what's going on and absorb. So I do that most nights of the week because that's just kind of how I wind down. So you're talking just on PlayStation time. You're talking probably
So it's about 10 hours.
10 hours just on that. On
Okay.
almost all of my car drives, if it's just me, I'm listening to. So it depends how much time I'm driving. Last week, but like last week, I was in Denver. I was in the hotel. I finished, I think, a whole book while I was up in Denver because I had so much transportation time. So the number is hard to quantify. I always like start with the Madden example because people will say I don't have time. It's like, I play Madden. I like playing Madden. I'm 34 years old. You make fun of me all you want, but I actually use that to crush through podcasts, audiobooks, and things like that. And so that's where I start at, just at least 10 hours.
So the reason I brought that up, because I knew the number was a big number. The reason I brought that up is because I think this is a softball statement, but I'm just going to say it anyways. The amount of learning that you do on a weekly or monthly basis way outpaces any 4-year degree on any level. I mean, the amount of osmosis in data that you pick up and information that you're picking up on a weekly basis. I mean, it's irrelevant whether you went to college or not, in my opinion. And the reason I say that is because I think there's a lot of people, and I see this a lot, that I went to a 4-year degree. I'm done learning. I don't need to do any more personal development. I don't need to do any more business development. I went to school. I learned everything. I'm good to go. Now I just need to do from 9 to 5. I get to clock out at 5. I get to clock back in at 9. In those off hours, I'm not doing anything to better myself. And I know this sounds aggressive because that's not necessarily
hyperbole here.
It's a lot, right? But I mean, I think the mentality is once I've gone to the 4-year college, and then especially if I've gone to like a law school or something like that, a lot of people are like, okay, now I'm done. I'm done doing the extra stuff. Now I just need to do my job. And I think it's really important to note that, and I'm the same way as you, by the way.
Oh,
Basically, any
that's why you put out 60 posts a week on LinkedIn. Seriously, that's why you do, because you put out so much stuff on LinkedIn because you're reading through it.
Yeah, no, I think I've talked about it, but as through my process on LinkedIn, I probably post about 65 to 80 posts a week, and I really only post maybe one in 8, 1 in 10 articles that I'm reading, and so that means I'm reading about 1,000 articles a week. Yeah. But but anytime I'm in the car, I'm listening to podcasts. I mean, it's organic to the process, and I think that's why the people that are. Let me say it a different way. Let me put a positive spin on it. The people that are doing that, I think they find themselves so far ahead of the people that aren't, that at some point in the career, the people that aren't are looking around, are like, where did everybody go? Right. It's, and so I think that's a really interesting dynamic to kind of supplement the other stuff that you're getting.
Yeah, and I think one thing I always like to point out is I don't know if it's the right term, but active listening. So an example is if I'm listening to a fiction book, I always use this example, and then I'll go to a podcast in a second. So if I'm listening to a book where it's a spy thriller, and the good guys, the U.S., the bad guys are Iran or whatever, and they get the guy and they torture him, they find it, they save the day. So I read that, and it could be a good book, or let's say it's a good book. I enjoy the book. However, I also think about the implications of what the character did throughout the book, and if that was in the real world, how would I judge that character? Would I say this was good or bad? Now, I can still enjoy we'll call it artwork for the novel, whatever, for this conversation. But I also think about the implications of what the character did, because that's how you round off your skill set and you think about scenarios. On the flip side, I was listening to a podcast last night. It was a sports podcast, and they were talking to Fox Sports News, the analytics guy. And they're talking about how advertising works and, the analytics and baseball. Remind me to the baseball stat in a minute. But anyways, and at the end of it, he said something pretty interesting. He goes, we have more data than we know what to do with to sell to advertisers. We have to be able to tell the story of what the data means. Now, me as in the podcast business, if I want to sell podcast sponsorships, it's always kind of, how do you present these numbers? And then, but that statement, because I'm actively thinking about podcasts, how to make my podcast better, how to grow them, whatever, that statement goes, oh, wait, hold on. This guy is, he's not talking about how to sell podcasts. He's talking about doing deals with huge, and, but active listening, I take that and I draw that out and I come to my team today. I'm like, hey, this guy said this. How do we present a story about our podcast that resonates with advertisers? And now, listen, you might be listening to this, go, hey, you dummy, that's obvious, and that's fine. But I'm looking for those types of things, whether it's in fiction, whether it's in sports podcasts, news podcasts. I'm always looking for those things, trying to pull them out to help me.
No, absolutely. I think we talked about it on a previous podcast, and I'll make it brief because I think we covered it. But one of the sources of information, and one of the things that I'm plugged into, I think more than most, are the people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, Ty Lopez, Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, that those kind of people. And there's a lot of people that listen to their messages and they get very turned off on them, but because they're very aggressive people, and they say things you don't want to hear. A lot of times that they say things that are, in my opinion, clearly hyperbole and just to say them. And a lot of people kind of hear that noise and they're like, oh, that's whatever, right? Whereas when I'm listening to those things, I have developed the strategy and developed the ability to completely ignore all of the noise and get to the core of the message, because I think those people, those guys, in addition to many others, but I think at the core of the message that they're presenting, there's a wealth of invaluable information. And if you can kind of ignore the hyperbole and get to the nitty gritty. And so to your point about active listening, I mean, that's what it takes. It takes actively listening to not only what's being said, but what's being intended by what's being said. What's the message behind the message? Because if you're just listening to the words, I would argue that you're a lot of times you're missing most of the point.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on. You brought up Ty Lopez, so I don't have a lot of his stuff. I don't. I every now and then he'll come across my feed and I'll kind of listen, but you're talking like a handful of times a year. But one time someone was interviewing him, I think is what it was, and they were saying you're a scam. You're basically a scam. And he knew coming into it, that it wasn't like a trap deal. Like he kind of knew they were going to come and grill him on if he's really who he says he is. Anyways, and one of the things he said that stuck with me, and I respected him about this. He said, you can go to college for 4 years and get a ton of student debt, and they're not guaranteeing you nothing. If you take my course and whatever course he's promoting, 30, 60, 90 days, if you don't get a job or make money, whatever it is, we give you your money back. And I thought, okay, you know what? I don't care what I think about you. Generally speaking, I don't have an opinion on Ty Lopez one way or the other, but I did respect the point he made there. You talk about cutting through the noise or getting to the message. The real message there is, go drop $120K on college debt, and then call me when you could have taken my course for $1,000 or $500, whatever it is, and I'll refund you. So theoretically, the real thing is take assuming you want to, you could take his course, get your money back, and then go to college because it didn't work, and then drop the $120K. But don't call him a fraud, because he's at least offering your money back if it doesn't work. And so I thought that was I thought what he was saying there. And again, I'm not speaking to the validity of what he says or not. I don't know enough about the man, but I did respect that he's the one to say, hey, here's my product, and this actually works, and I'll give you your money back if it doesn't. And so I think you talk about listening to what's going on there. That's a pretty profound message, because if you go to law school and you don't get a law degree and you have this great network and you have all this stuff, law school is not going to be like, oh, we're going to give you your money back. Sorry about that. Oh, you can't pass the bar. You got to take another bar. You got to take another bar class to do it. Sorry. So I think that there is a lot of validity into what you're saying, and thinking about some of these things these guys are saying. What's behind that? And there's a lot. Anyways, that was a profound statement by Ty. I've always respected when he said that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really valuable. I think that comes from the conviction and the confidence and the the desire to make it happen, right? I mean, this all comes from the inherent desire to really make something great of yourself. And I know that sounds grandiose, but the reason I say that is because something I was thinking about when you were just talking is, and I don't know necessarily if this is something I would hang my hat on, but to a degree, I think there are a lot of people that just go to college simply because it's the thing to do. And there is no plan, there is no reason behind it, there's no direction. And so not only is it maybe not the best use of money, in the best of circumstances, I think there's also something to be said for, there may be a lot of people that it's purely wasting money because there's no direction to begin with. And so then can you imagine how many, and I don't know what the number is, but I would imagine it's a large percentage, or maybe a large number, I shouldn't say a large percentage, but I bet there's a lot of people that graduate with a 4-year degree with truly no idea what they want to do. And to me, that means that something along the chain broke. If you're graduating from a 4-year degree with no direction, you're the person that should be going to trade school, right?
Yeah.
Because that gives you that direction. And so it amazes me that there's so many 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are blindly just signing up. And you said 120. I think the number is closer to 200.
That was being nice, yeah.
I'm blindly signing up for hefty 6-figure debt, with no plan in place.
And just to be clear, if I slapped you with a $200,000 debt today, you're not a college graduate that's 23 getting your first job. If I said, hey, you owe me $200K, start paying on it, you would not be happy. You have to have a substantial amount of money before $200K is irrelevant. So if you're going to get out of college with an $80K a year job, which is a good paying job, $200K is a substantial amount of debt. You got to buy a house. So you're probably going to get married. You're going to have kids. So I know. I think you're right. I will say this, to your point about the 16, 17, 18-year-old deal. We have pushed the immediacy of graduate high school, start college, and we've lost the ability for young college age people to try things. I think that's the travesty, partially because it is a 4-year commitment. That's a long time. But my advice would be this. I had a friend many years ago, and he wasn't making a lot of money. And he was married, had one or two, a couple kids. Anyways, and he was thinking about changing careers. And what I told him was, I said, listen, this is the least amount of money you will ever make in your life. This is the least. You're only going to make more. If you change jobs now, it's easier. You go 3 years from now, you're going to make more money. It's harder. So college-age kids, high school kids, need to understand that. That's probably, now post-college, depending on what's going on, but 17, 18 years old, you're making a minimum wage, $10 an hour, whatever it is. That's the least money you will probably ever make in your life. That's when you have the ability to go roll the dice. Because if you fail when you're making $10 an hour, there's 1,000 other $10 an hour jobs. If you fail making $150 a year, there's a lot of those jobs, but they're in high demand and high competition. And your mortgage is higher and your expenses are higher. So I think we've lost that. Hey, go risk it when you're 18. I'm not talking about go risk it like travel the world and waste the 4 or 5 years doing nothing. I'm saying go try to be an entrepreneur. Go work 6 months in a job. See if you like it. Yeah,
go work 6 months in a different job. Go see if you like it. Yeah, no, those are the years where you can afford to not have a plan and afford to kind of play with it and kind of figure it out. Because think about how many people, when you were just talking, I was kind of running through the list. Think about how many people in your life that that are, let's say 27 and older and just straight miserable in their job. But they're stuck in it because they cannot afford to change because they have a wife and the kids and the house and the mortgage and all the other things. And so to move on, to pivot would be too much of a risk. Think about how many people in your life that describes. It's staggering.
And the reality is that 27 is probably the cheapest it's ever going to be for you to pivot to, right? So even though it's hard on
purpose, right?
No. I'm agreeing with you saying that if it's hard at 27, imagine 35. Right. Imagine 44, because at 44 you're looking at retirement, going, "Okay, I've got this much of it." So I'm not saying. I think that sometimes the message of quit and change jobs and all that stuff is overhyped and overplayed. Maybe you should suck it up and maybe make an 80K and whatever. I'm saying, but for those younger people, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, you got a 3-year window there where you can try to be an entrepreneur. You can try sales. A lot of people think they like sales and they don't. And so they don't find it out until they put themselves in a bad position to do that. You can find out at 18 selling cell phones if you like it or not.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you kind of touched on for a second there that I want to circle back to is that I certainly don't want to come off as saying that the grass is always greener on the other side, because I don't believe that at all. That's not something that I personally believe, and so I certainly wouldn't want to say that on the podcast. So it's not as though like changing for the sake of changing is a positive thing. That's not what either Ryan or I were saying. But it's about, from like 16 to 19 or whatever, when you're younger, you have more fairway and more free time, or you have the ability to pivot into other things and experiment, because you don't have nearly the responsibilities that someone like the Ryan or I do, or maybe not me, everybody else.
Sure, yeah. No, I mean, I think I hate to give out blanket advice. I would say if you're 17, graduate high school, and your parents go to college, and you're not want to be a doctor, lawyer, or whatever, the deal I would strike is theoretically is give me 1 year, mom and dad, and I'm going to work. I'm not going to be looking for applications. I'm going to take Ryan up on his 100% sales commission job. I'm going to work. I'm going to go fish for crabs in Alaska, whatever it is that you think that you want to do. Give me 1 year to try it out. And if that doesn't work, then, maybe I go to trade school or college or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think most parents, if you have something, we consider that. None of these are blanket statements. You have to evaluate it. And again, I go back to something I said a long time ago, or not a long time ago, earlier in the podcast, is I hate to give too much advice because my mentality, I know how I think. And I have a good friend, and he's you're going to give me so much crap about this. He's getting an MBA. Okay. And this is a guy I have a lot of respect for, super smart guy. There's no reason he needs an MBA in my opinion, but he's getting one. And so he was telling me a while back about some international deal they're studying in class. So when I was in South Africa, I was texting him. I'm like, hey, I know you have class today. I bet y'all are learning about what I'm actually doing, But so he's a good friend. So we go back and forth with each other about that. He's very much have a degree, get licensed and anything like that. And that's fun. I think for him, he's so smart and so talented, he doesn't need it, but whatever. But when I talk about mentality, part of my mentality is like, I want to prove to him, because I consider him someone, a legit threat to me, not in like a negative way. Like if we were in the room negotiating, he might get the best. He might get the better. He's that good. Like I consider him a legit threat. So for me to be able to prove to him that I can do the deal without the MBA, that's important for me, because I'm validating what I believe is true. I want nothing but the best for this guy. So I'm not. So you see the dynamic I'm playing there is that I want to be successful. I want to do things. I want to prove to this person that it can be done without that. But also because I have so much respect for him as a person that it's like, I gotta be careful here. He'll show me up.
I aspire to have you intimidated by me when I'm in the same room as you. I want to get there. So I know we've got to wrap up. I know we're trying to wrap up here in a few minutes. So I wanted to circle back to something you said at the beginning of the podcast. Yeah. So we're 14 episodes? This is 14.
I think this is like 16, right? Nate, what episode is this? Nate's over there. Is Nate over there? Nate's gone. Never mind. He's just gone. He just chucked the deuces. I think this is like 16 or 17. It's not 20. We haven't made it to
no, it's definitely not over 15. I think this is 14, but it doesn't matter. Either way, so we're 15 episodes in. Earlier in the podcast, you referenced me as your good friend. I was curious. I just want to time. I want to know.
Oh boy, here we go. Let's get back to college degrees.
I just want to timestamp it.
This is 14.
Let's 14. Call it. Yeah, 14. Yeah,
I'm looking up. It's 14. You're right.
So I just want to timestamp episode 14. I was a good friend. I don't know what episode I'm gonna go up the totem pole. That's all. I didn't have anything else. That was all I wanted to say about it.
Hey, did you see delete Facebook is trending on Twitter at the moment?
No, but I'm not surprised. Wait, I'm not surprised.
That's sorry, I had to dodge the question there.
When are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter just going to combine? Just call it a day.
Oh, good friend. The question really. See, you're asking the question wrong. Let's start there. The real question is of my hierarchy of friends, how high can you ascend? See, good friend could be the top rung.
But see, the problem is that I have this mantra. You know this about me. I have this mantra that I don't ask questions that I don't want the answer to.
Okay.
I don't want to ask the question because I don't want it.
I could call everyone a good friend, right? And then you're kind of down at the bottom. Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. I like it. I like where your head's at. I like the way you're thinking. You're on top of your game.
So here's a question I do want the answer to.
Yeah.
How many people, and I don't want the name of the tier, but how many people are in the top tier?
2,
of the
maybe 3.
of like okay.
You're up there. You're way up there. You're the top. You're the top tier. You're the top tier.
No, don't lie to me. Don't lie. You can't lie on air. That's like Nate. You got to cut that.
What? If we go by, if we use metrics, if we went the saber metrics right here on per capita communication, you'd have to be number 1.
Don't make me pull that picture up.
Per capita communicate? No, who I communicate with? No. I'm saying like the people that I talk to. You're up there.
No, I was just going to taunt you live on.
Don't taunt me. Don't taunt me with the numbers. They're depressing.
No, I was going to show you the. Never mind. I'll do it next episode.
Yeah, I don't even know. Now you got me really scared. Do we have to mark this episode explicit or something? I do want to ask you this because you really haven't interacted with this a whole lot. So help me out. The mentality deal. We've talked about this offline. For me, I like to use the thing. I like to have a lot of lines in the water. I have a certain mentality, and I hate to vocalize it because when I vocalize it, it probably comes across a little bit more brash than what I wanted to come across. But I also have to think that way because I don't know how else to function. And that's the hard line is like I want to go down and close a deal in South Africa. And then I can give my buddy a hard time who's getting an MBA about it. Now I don't have any ill will towards him. But it is like a scoreboard thing. Like, hey, look at this. I did this. Where's your dead cat on the front door at? But I don't actually walk around like beating my chest like, oh, look at me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the difference here is that most people don't have the platform that you do. So most people aren't telling people their motivations, their internal motivations, like to thousands of people. I think that the key is what you're telling, like what you're saying right now. That's what internally motivates you to get going. I've got a lot of those internal motivators as well. I haven't shared many of them, but I mean, I have the same mentality. I don't think it's necessarily a mentality thing. I think it's that you've identified the things that really work for you to get you going. Just like, the ACD song, right? So if you're, you have.
We haven't talked about that on here, have we?
I think we talked about it briefly a couple episodes back, didn't we?
Maybe we did.
I think we did.
I thought about that the other day. Someone started playing it, and I was like, "Yeah, there we go. There we go."
And so that's the other thing. That's the thing about it. And actually, that's exactly what I wanted to bring up. So now, I bet when you hear that song, not in the context of trying to get you fired up, but you hear it at like a bar or like you're at a house party and randomly comes on or whatever, you get fired up because that's just it's now ingrained in you that when you hear that song, you get fired up. And so to that point, I think that's something that like it takes let me say it this way. It's a process to really get within yourself. I know it sounds like esoteric, but get within yourself and really figure out what triggers you. I think a lot of people aren't nearly as plugged in with themselves as they think they are, if that makes sense. And so some people, the people that that I hear talk about not being motivated and not really not wanting to do more and those kind of things, I would advocate a lot of times that's not necessarily laziness or lack of direction. That's just the lack of time spent with the intent of figuring out what really like internally moves them. Because I think that everybody has that. I think everybody has those buttons that if you push them, you just get you'll want to light the world on fire. But unless you like listen to the podcast that we do and do the external, motivation type of things and kind of expose yourself to those, those elements, I wonder if it's really like difficult for some people to really tap into that.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, I think some people have a 9-to-5 and they like their 9-to-5, but they listen to guys like me and you or Gary Vee or not with the same vein as those guys, but whatever, Ty Lopez is like, oh man, I want what they got. And what I'm saying about mentality, that's part of what I'm getting at is if you like your 9-to-5, bro, don't let me talk you out of it because that's be content, be happy there. Like, I think so much of this, we talked about this before. Everyone should be an entrepreneur. And I do not think that's the case. I think that's a very false narrative. So anyways, I was saying that I think people probably are happy and content. They just feel external pressure.
So now I understand what you were saying before. No, I completely agree. In terms of, no, I think you can listen to Gary Vee, this podcast, any of those type of things, Grant Cardone, et cetera, and implement those things within a 9-to-5. I'm not advocating for like, if you're in I don't think either one of us are obviously, but we're not advocating for like, if you're in a 9-to-5, these things are offline to you and not available. I mean, that's certainly not the case at all, right? I mean, these are skills that you can and so the motivation isn't necessarily like go run my own business, but the motivation can be, how can I be the absolute best X for my client, whatever the position is.
Yeah. So let me say it like this. I've read How to Win Friends and Influence People probably 3 or 4 times now. Okay. There's very little from that book I can practically use. It's just not my personality, but it's got a lot of good stuff in there. I actually think a lot of stuff works. By the 4th time, I've probably implemented more than I did the first time, but it's a very slow process. So if Dale Carnegie was alive and he sat down with me and he told me all this, where I'm at today, where Ryan's at 34 years old, I would know, okay, great, Dale. It's not really my thing. I'm not, it's not wrong. It's just not me. My fear with telling people stuff is I'm always afraid because I'm self-aware enough. And I hate to say this because I'm very egotistical, because of my self-awareness that I know what I'm not. I'm always afraid to project what you should be, which is me, because you might not be like me. That AC/DC, Thunderstruck, Live may not get you fired up, and that's fine. So you have to kind of balance these things and figure out, as you're saying, what pushes you, what motivates you, how you hone that in, and try to do you. To your point, though, I want to make one more point here. One of the things, and I almost wrote an ebook about this, how to get your boss's job, and maybe I will one day. Do you know how easy it is to get your boss's job? Like, to me, I think that is. We're talking about going and closing an international deal, 16-hour plane flights, international lawyers, contracts. That's a pain in the butt. It really is. You want to get your boss's job? I can hook you up with that. That's actually pretty easy, because unless you are really incompetent, your boss is super competent, the level between you and your boss is probably not that much. I'm talking about large spanning corporations where it's just a slow incremental step. Now, small businesses, you could see that because a manager might have a lot of different responsibilities. But the large companies, taking your boss's job probably isn't that hard.
That's an important distinction I was waiting for you to make. But yeah. I mean, you're not talking about going from like the guy sweeping the floors to the CEO of the company. I mean, you're talking about working up the chain. But
working up the chain. Yeah. Well, your immediate boss. And so, like, I go into companies, a large companies, a lot of times, and you'll see the manager, and you'll see 3 or 4 of the subordinates that are a lot sharper, a lot closer. And so, taking the boss's job is quite easy. The answer is to get the boss promoted.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Yeah, that's actually. I was going to go out from the other way. I was just going to say you'd be surprised, or you may be surprised at how often just day in and day out executing your job and doing the little bit extra, like things that we've talked about on the podcast. If you just do those little things extra, those are the things that'll just like you'll look back and be like, I just laughed at everybody.
Because your boss will get promoted. In that case, because you're going to see, like I said a few episodes ago, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. I think it's important. If you want to be an entrepreneur, and not all entrepreneurs, but the kind of stuff that we do. If you're in an engineering firm where you're designing bridges, it's probably a little different. But the kind of stuff that we do, the best entrepreneur would be the right-hand man for their client. And the right-hand man makes their boss. So if I'm working for Bill Gates, I'm going to make Mr. Gates, I'm going to call him Mr. Gates. I'm going to make him look good. I'm going to always have his best interest at heart, yada, yada, yada. That's if he's paying me to be his personal assistant or he's paying me as a consultant outside. It doesn't matter. I'm going to make Mr. Gates look good. I'm going to be the best right-hand man Mr. Gates has to have. Same thing with your boss. If he's incompetent, make him look competent. Get him promoted, because eventually, if he's really incompetent, at some point he'll get promoted and get fired because he's not really competent. Maybe he's more competent than you realize, but making him look good will get him promoted. And then you have the better shot of actually getting promoted because you showed that you were competent. And to me, that's something simple. It kind of gets lost in the noise sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't think I've really given that much thought. That dynamic. But I think you're absolutely right, because you think how many people get really very egotistical about their work, and then when like someone else gets promoted out, they get like, oh well, that was my work, or that I did that. I think there's really interesting dynamic for just kind of playing the game and putting in the work and just organically having trust in the process that you will benefit from that. Because, if someone else gets promoted out of their position, you might be able to fill that and kind of climb the ladder. And that's an interesting dynamic.
Well,
I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, but what do we do as deal makers? We try to make both sides look as good as possible so that the deal gets done. We try to present the best case possible. We try to hold their hand. We try to walk them through the process to get the deal done. And in turn, we get a promotion, AKA a check. So it's I
don't know about you, but I like my promotions better than the other ones.
Yeah,
So
sure.
am I allowed to say that on there? I'm sorry. I apologize.
I don't even know what that meant, but
I would rather get the check than get like president to CEO or like
no, right. So my agreed. The only thing I'm saying is
it was a facetious comment.
I got you. I understand. The only reason I'm making the comment about getting the boss's job is because some people could listen to this and go, "Oh my God, college, not college, da da da." And the reality is, they just want their boss's job. That's all they really want. That's the fulfillment they want, is to go from 60K to 80K, manage a few people. Well, the easiest way to do that is to get your boss promoted, because in doing that, your quality of work will go up, and everything that you do will go up, and then you will know what to expect from your subordinates, because you've been this type of subordinate that you would want to have work for you. So
isn't it amazing how that all comes together? Yeah, you're absolutely right. You put in the work, you put in the extra, and all the pieces start to kind of come together.
Okay, Ben, people can connect with you, unfortunately, on LinkedIn. Please don't, because he's crushing me right now. Please connect with me. Is
that where we're going from? We've gone to that part of the podcast. Okay, fair enough.
The veil has been lifted.
It's all right. I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to sometime in like 2026.
Wow.
When LinkedIn is no longer a thing anymore.
I will pass you
for 1 week.
I'll pass you like right before they shut it down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call up Microsoft like, please let me pass him for 1 week. So please don't connect with Ben. But listen, you ain't got to connect with him. Just view my profile more than Ben's. That's really the stat we're going for here. It's a vanity stat, and
bringintheclosers@gmail.com if you want to give us any feedback on the podcast, any questions you want us to answer. I actually put out. So I'll say this real quick. I put out a post. I think it was last week on LinkedIn about, hey, having fun doing the podcast, and I was soliciting engagement. I will say it off. I was soliciting feedback. I got a couple of responses, but I didn't get enough. And so if you have something that you want to hear about on the podcast, or if you have feedback about what Ryan can do better, reach out to us. Let us know.
Shots fired right there at the end. Just mowed me down. The bar has been to turn on record. I have faithfully done that. Faithfully.
You did do that? I don't think I heard it today. Did you?
Yeah, it's recording. It's recording. Right. It says it is. I don't know if it actually is or not. I can't confirm or deny, but it says it is. Bring in the closers. Connect with Ben. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I will be at the Bush China Foundation here in 2 weeks, talking about international policy, breaking it down for you. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm on the hackathon, so I'll be talking about that. We're going to hack a foreign policy. Not like, whoa, this is just getting off the rails quickly. This is
he's going to China to hack something.
Oh, good Lord. With my visa.
He's going to China. He said he's going to China for a hackathon.
I can't. That's all I mean. A hackathon is when you sit down with a group of people and you try to fix a policy and propose it to the conference. That's the only hacking I can do. I can't even spell hack. I'm getting off this podcast because I'm getting in more trouble than I know what to do with. The CIA is not listening. It's going downhill. Ben Samuels, great as always, good friend. Like that shot. To listeners, we'll talk to you next time.
Appreciate it, buddy. Have a good one.